Shirley Jackson truly is a master of perception over reality. And this is something that is very, very difficult to convey through the confines of written text on a page. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for a video which will appear in multiple playlists on the channel. Number one being the short story discussion playlist, a collection of videos over short stories, and number two, the first in a short story by short story read through of Shirley Jackson, Let Me Tell You. This will also be in a Shirley Jackson playlist, but I don't think I've constructed that playlist quite yet because I don't have too terribly much Shirley Jackson on the channel just yet. This video will have a So What Happened recap of the text, a literary criticism portion, and a writer's corner. So let's get into it. What happened in this short story, Paranoia by Shirley Jackson. Halloran Beresford just got off work and remembered it's his wife's birthday, buying her a box of candy. But he faces a lot of competition trying to get home. Missing a taxi, getting edged out on the way to a bus as well. So he gets elbowed out of the bus, basically. So he tries for the subway station, but realizes that the guy who elbowed him off the bus is following him. So he dips into a souvenir shop. So does the guy. The guy advances on him in the shop, and Halloran yells and runs out into the street. But Halloran sees him again at the corner up the street. Eventually, he catches the bus. Halloran does. But he notices that the bus is skipping stops, fearing that they are trying to trap him on the bus and take him to some unknown location. Eventually, Halloran gets off the bus and approaches the man who had been following him, as the man who had been following him is on the street corner. He threatened to report the man to the police. But report what? So he races to catch a train and barely does so. But the people on the train somehow recognize him, though he does not know who they are. And he bunkers down in the back of the train and rides all the way home, where his wife meets him and asks him what is wrong before we get the story that ends like this. He put his head back against the soft chair as he went out, falling asleep. Never knew that door had a key, his mind registered dimly as he heard it turn. Then he was on his feet with his head against the door, listening to her on the telephone in the hall. She dialed and waited. Then, "Listen," she said. "Listen, he came here after all. I've got him." Now, how much of this do we believe is actually happening? I'm not sure, right? So this feels as much, many Shirley Jackson short stories feel ripped straight out of an episode of The Twilight Zone. And normally it would be an insult to a writer to say that their short stories feel like television shows. But The Twilight Zone is an exception, as is Shirley Jackson. Here's what I want to talk about starting this discussion. Masculinity. Now, why? Why do I want to talk about masculinity with this short story? Listen to this. Mr. Halloran Beresford, pleasantly tired after a good day in the office, still almost clean-shaven for 8 hours, his pants still neatly pressed, pleased with himself particularly for remembering, stepped out of the candy shop with a box under his arm and started briskly for the corner. There were 20 small-size gray suits like Mr. Beresford on every New York block, 50 men still clean-shaven and pressed after a day in the air-cooled office. 100 men, perhaps, pleased with themselves for remembering their wives' birthdays. Whoops, what are we doing here? I was editing something else. Scared me for a second. So what we have in that opening paragraph is Halloran comparing himself to other men, saying, by the way, at the end of the day, he's still clean shaven. The testosterone in his body hasn't produced enough humph to break that clean shavenness, right? So this seems rudimentary. This doesn't seem like it has anything to do with masculinity until we start to notice more things about facial hair in this short story. Now, he's also saying in this opening paragraph, there's 50 other guys just like me. There's 100 other guys that have done the same thing that I have done after work, remembering their wives. So he's saying that what he's doing, who he is not particularly standout. There is no, if we are to delve into the realm of a little bit of pop culture internet stuff, there's no alpha there. The alpha male is the guy who exists as one. He's saying, I am just one of. So, okay, fine. What else? Remember that clean-shaven bit? Mr. Beresford went a few steps into the street, waved at a taxi, said in a voice that went hopelessly falsetto. Falsetto is a man singing in a high note that mimics a common woman's pitch. That's falsetto, very high pitch. Then slunk back. Because he had that falsetto in his voice, instead of a deep rumble, the taxi just ignored him. There's not enough man there to get my attention. Then slunk back abashed to the sidewalk while the taxi went by uncomprehending. A man in a light hat stopped next to Mr. Beresford on the sidewalk, and for a minute in the middle of the crowd, he stared at Mr. Beresford. Stared at him. This is primitive. This is primate. You look at another man, an alpha ape, for example, looks at another ape. This ape, not the alpha ape, the beta ape, has to look away. That's how it works. If you stare for too long, now we have to fight. You are challenging me. Where are we at here? Stared at Mr. Beresford, as people sometimes do without caring particularly what they see. He didn't even care what he was looking at. What Mr. Beresford saw was a thin-faced man under the light hat, a small mustache, constantly commenting on facial hair. A coat collar turned up. Funny-looking guy, Mr. Beresford thought, lightly touching his own clean-shaven upper lip. I don't have that mustache. Perhaps the man thought Mr. Beresford's unconscious gesture was offensive. At any rate, he frowned and looked at Mr. Beresford up and down before turning away. Ugly customer, Mr. Beresford thought. We have, moving forward in this short story, on page 6. So we have there Beresford saying, I'm not remarkable. There's so many guys just like me. I don't have all the testosterone in my body to make that mustache, to make it look right. My face is still clean shaven after an entire day. We have on page 6, Mr. Beresford's vivid recollection of his own small size and innate cautiousness. So he's also small. He is literally, by volume, less man. He is innately cautious. So you've seen, peacocks. Peacocks have that big ornate tail. It's not for themselves. It's for the purpose of mating. What it says genetically, basically, through evolution, is that they say that peacock says, look, I've got all of this prowess about myself. I can be large and ornate, and the predators still can't get me, baby. You want that type of protection, don't you? I am so alpha that I can advertise to predators, and they still can't do anything about it. So there's the innate cautiousness is not alpha. Then we have on the next page, Mr. Beresford talking to someone, and he says, no thanks, Mr. Beresford said, trying to make his tenor voice firm, Tenor. He's trying now in the short story, after all of these implications of being less man, he's trying to make his voice lower. No thanks. Trying to be firm. So he is now at the point of paranoid, or what we're going to get to in a moment, at the point of paranoid, where he is trying to overcompensate for his own perceived shortcomings. We get to this next on page 10. If you don't stop at the next stop, Mr. Beresford said, I shall smash the glass in this door and shout for help. With what? The driver said. That box of candy? Now he is being openly challenged by other men. Other men are saying, oh, you're going to threaten me? Oh, with what? What are you going to act with? That box of candy? That's how scary you are? Your weapon is a box of candy? Do it, pal. Then we have, on page 12 here, Mr. Beresford felt the grasp on his arm turn suddenly into an irresistible force that drew him through the doors, and they closed behind him. Everyone in the car was laughing at him by now, and the big man said, That ain't no way to treat a lady, chum. Now he's being physically harangued, and he's being put upon for the way he treats women. These are constant reminders to Mr. Beresford that he is less man. And finally, he looked at her. She was wearing her blue dress. This is when he gets home to his wife. And that meant she knew it was her birthday and expected him to take her out. So that is a false expectation. Now your own wife wants something of you that you're not going to provide. And the very last part of this sentence, he handed her the box of candy limply. Now, I don't have to tell you what limply would mean to a man. I don't have to make the sexual connotation there. You know quite well. It seems to me that a very large component of this short story is the fact that Beresford, Mr. Beresford, that Halloran Beresford is being looked at, made out to be less man, and what that means to him through the course of a day. Now, I think that there's something else psychologically going on in this short story. It's titled Paranoia. I think perhaps a slightly more fitting assessment here as a reader would be inferiority complex. Obviously, we just went through the ideas of masculinity in this short story, but here's this. You were in school, and you knew you had a test, and you knew you didn't study for that test, right? You knew you were going to fail said test. Isn't it strange how in that circumstance, oh man, you sure do have a stomach ache and a sniffle, something in your chest. Maybe you shouldn't go to school. And once you start going to school, man, you sure do hit all the red lights, and maybe you're running late. And if you're running late, you can only run so late so many times. Maybe you should stay home, because just call in, right? Call into school, call off of school, right? Because if you're going to miss part of the day, just miss the whole thing. Why, there is something bad waiting for you. You did not do what you were supposed to do. You cannot perform. You are unable to do the thing that is expected. You have this somatoform disorder pop up because you're avoiding the thing that you know you are lesser than. Because you are lesser than that thing, you avoid everything. We have here Beresford, who I think feels that he's not much of a man, and he is avoiding his wife at the end because he cannot provide her the birthday that she wants, because he does not think he deserves her. So in his mind, all of these things pop up. The final thing that I want to talk about here, this plays into these other ideas. Shirley Jackson is so good that she is able to put layers onto this cake that are complementary, but do not necessarily have to be the same thing. So, for example, there's the constant, what are you going to do in this short story? The bus driver tells him, report me. Report me. Go ahead. Report me. Take this card, call the bus company, right? You better stop or I'm going to break out that window. Oh, yeah? With what? Your candy? Good luck, pal. Then he goes and says, I'm going to report this guy that's been following me. I'm going to report him to the police. For what? So every time that we have Halloran believing that there is some way to gain power in his circumstance, it is shot down. Every time we have Halloran believing that he's going to be able to transcend the limits of his being, his masculinity, his oomphness, whatever it is you want to call it, he thinks he's going to be able to rise above the circumstance. Somebody just calls him out. What are you going to do about it? Huh? Call the number. Shut up and sit down. Right? So there is, I think that that's just a, Halloran talks himself out of going to the police at the end. Right? So the first time is with the bus driver, where the bus driver says, sit down and shut up, pal. After that, he's asking himself, what am I going to go to the police with? What am I going to do here? He's already talking himself out of it. So if you're going to title the short story Paranoia, what a beautiful small element to put in there to basically confirm the idea of powerlessness. People constantly questioning. Now, moving on to the writer's corner portion of this video, the one real note that I have, so besides the point that if you can pull off a story that is perception over reality, kudos. I don't know how to get you there. I don't know what to say about that. But this opening paragraph, Mr. Halloran Beresford, pleasantly tired after a good day in the office, still almost clean-shaven after 8 hours, his pants still neatly pressed, pleased with himself, particularly for remembering, stepped out of the candy shop with a box of chocolate under his arm and started briskly for the corner. There were 20 small-sized gray suits like Mr. Beresford's on every New York block, 50 men still cleanly shaven and pressed after a day in an air-cooled office, 100 men, perhaps, pleased with themselves for remembering their wives' birthdays. Mr. Beresford was going to take his wife out to dinner. He decided going to see if he could get a last-minute tickets to a show, taking his wife candy. It had been an exceptionally good day together, and Mr. Beresford walked along swiftly, humming musically to himself. That opening paragraph does a great job of giving you the precise person that we will be following, the precise circumstance in which that individual finds himself. This is Mr. Beresford. He is cleanly shaven. He has a good job. He works downtown. Gives us the situation in which he finds himself. It's his wife's birthday. The show thing, whatever. But we got candy. Then, in the same paragraph, in the same sentences, tells us the place. Oh, we're in New York. We're in a big city. And gives us scale. Gives us a crowd around Beresford. Look, there's 50 guys right here that have done this thing. There's 100 guys on this block that have remembered their wives' birthday. So it's still even though it's telling us that this is a very specific thing, it's not all that uncommon, right? These things that are happening to Halloran, well, they could happen to you. This could be your tomorrow. It's Halloran's today. It could be your tomorrow. It also allows us, despite the fact that we were on this journey, to lose Halloran in the crowd. It welcomes us into the bigger picture of the story. That is a lot going on in a very little space, and it is breathless. There's no hiccups here. The sentences are not simple like Hemingway. Neither are they particularly verbose, for example, like William Faulkner. This is plain English, but it's interestingly composed. You are, that opening paragraph, that opening sentence, Halloran Beresford, we've got him, pleasantly tired after a good day in the office. So now we have a little bit of context on him, still almost cleanly shaven after 8 hours. His pants still neatly pressed, pleased with himself particularly for remembering, stepped out of a candy shop with a great box under his arm and started briskly for the corner. A compound sentence. There's a lot of stuff going on there, but it's straight through. We can see it. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. There is literature content on the channel. That's all I do here. There's poetry every Monday. So consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more literary discussions in the future. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one. If I can get the button to work here.